Hey there and welcome to a new video. In today's video, we will solve a complex SQL interview question. So first let us go through the question in detail and then we will see the schema and then solution how to get the expected output. So we have to write a query to calculate the average subscription duration and the average amount paid per subscription for each customer. Now additionally, we have to identify the customers who have a longest subscription gap between two consecutive subscriptions. And the result should contain customer ID, average subscription duration, which should be in days, and then average amount paid per subscription, and then coming down we have to obtain the longest gap between subscription, and the longest gap will be the difference between two consecutive subscription for each customer, and that also we have to calculate in the final result. So these are the four columns that we require in our final output. Now the requirement is again given in detail. So the first thing we have to calculate the average subscription duration as the difference between start date and end date for each subscription. Then the second thing is to calculate the average amount paid as the average of amount paid column for each customer. Now the third thing, for each customer we have to find the longest gap between two consecutive subscription by calculating the difference between start date of the current subscription and end date of the previous subscription. Now fourth point is only include the customer who have at least two subscription. And finally, when returning the result should be ordered by longest gap between subscription in descending order. So this is the requirement. And the question is pretty long and it has got lot of conditions that we have to make sure when writing the query. Now before going to the result query, first let us go through the table that we have created, which is the subscriptions table. Execute this and we have the subscription table. It has got subscription ID, customer ID, start date, end date and amount paid. Now based on the table, we have to write some query to get the result in the required format, which I have already created in an Excel. So we can take a look at that as well. So here is the expected output that we have to obtain. So this is the same table which we now saw in SSMS, and this is the expected output which has customer ID, average subscription duration, then average amount paid, and this is the longest gap between subscription for each customer. Now let us go through one customer ID and see how we have obtained the result in the given format. And for customer ID 101, here we have three record, that is subscription ID 1, 2 and 3 corresponds to customer ID 101. And here when we go through the average subscription duration, it is given the average is 60, means 60 days. Now how we calculated that is, we calculated the difference between start date and end date for each subscription ID for that particular customer. And then we took the average of that subscription duration with respect to a particular customer and we got the average subscription duration for a particular customer, that is 101. Now going to average amount paid, it is pretty simple because already the amount paid is given in the table. Now the only thing we have to do here is to write an average function and get the average with respect to each customer ID. That is average of 50, 55 and 60 will give us average 55, corresponds to customer ID 101. And then finally we have to calculate the longest gap between subscription. So how we calculated that is, first we have to find the difference between the end date and start date of consecutive subscription with respect to a customer. So here we have to first calculate the difference between the end date corresponding to subscription ID 1 and start date corresponding to subscription ID 2 for the customer 101. So difference between 0103/2023 and 0104/2023. So that thing we have to calculate and we have to create an additional column based on that. Now coming to record 2 and 3, that is subscription ID 2 and 3, we have to again do the same thing. We have to calculate the difference between end date corresponding to subscription ID 2 and start date corresponding to subscription ID 3, that is difference between 0106/2023 and 0108/2023. That also we have to calculate and populate in the new column. Now from that new column we have to calculate the maximum duration. So we have to only apply the maximum function and obtain the duration with respect to a particular customer from the input table. So that is how we calculate the longest gap between subscription, and it will be pretty clear when we write the query because we are going to write the query as CTE so that each part of the solution will be very clear. Now let us go back to SSMS and start writing the query to obtain the result. Now we will start writing query for the same. So we will start with select star from subscription table. Now we require all the columns from the subscription table along with two additional columns that we are going to create. So the first will be the difference between start date and end date for each subscription ID. And for that we are going to make use of the date diff function, open and close parenthesis. First argument will be the interval. So we require the difference in days, and first argument will be start date and second argument will be end date, and this will be the duration, that is subscription duration, and we will give a prefix also, that is subscription duration. Execute and we will get a new column, that is subscription duration. Now we have to calculate another column which we will make use of in the upcoming CTEs. So here we are going to use the lag window function, lag open and close parenthesis, and lag we will apply on the end date column, that is end date, and offset will be 1, and when there are no valid value it will be replaced with null. So over open and close parenthesis, and now we have to write the partition. Once we have the result, I will explain why we created the new column based on lag function. Partition by customer ID, customer underscore ID, and now we have to order the result based on start date, start underscore date, which should be in ascending order. Now this column we will name as previous subscription start date, and this column we will name as previous subscription end date, end underscore date. Execute, and we have a new column which is created, that is previous subscription end date. Now when we look at the previous subscription end date, we can see that this column and the start date column we can use to calculate the difference between consecutive subscriptions. So this is the end date corresponding to previous subscription ID 1, and this is the start date corresponding to previous subscription ID 2. Now if we calculate the difference, we will get the difference in days between consecutive subscription. So that we can easily calculate now using the previous subscription end date column which we have created. So that is why we created the new column previous subscription end date. Now we will place this entire query inside the first CTE, that is with T1 as open and close parenthesis, select, and this is taken from CTE T1, and now we require all the columns from CTE T1, and now we are going to calculate one additional column which will be the difference between start date and previous subscription end date, and for that we are going to make use of the date diff function once again. Date diff interval will be in days, and first argument will be start date, second argument will be previous subscription end underscore date, close parenthesis, and this will be the difference between consecutive subscription, difference consecutive subscription. Execute, and we have an additional column which is the difference between consecutive subscription, and since the result is in negative values, we will make a small change here, that is we will swap the expression, that is start date can be considered as end date and previous subscription end date can be considered as start date. So here this will be the order in which we have to provide the arguments. Execute, and we will get the difference in consecutive subscription as positive values. Now using this result, we are going to calculate the average amount paid, average subscription duration, and what is the maximum difference between consecutive subscription for a particular customer. And for that we are going to place this second query also inside a CTE, that is T2 as open and close parenthesis, select from T2. Now the first column will be customer ID, customer underscore ID, comma, and second will be average of amount paid, amount underscore paid, and the column name let us copy from the question, so we will give that later. So this will be the second column. Third column will be average of subscription duration, sub underscore duration. So this will be the third column, and this column name also we will copy from the question. And finally we have to calculate the maximum difference between consecutive subscription. For that we will make use of the max aggregate function and calculate the max of diff underscore consecutive subscription. Open and close parenthesis, as we will copy the column name from the question once again. So what are the column name? Average subscription duration, that is the first column name, and second will be average amount paid, that is the column name for average amount paid, and third column will be longest gap between subscription, so that is the final column. Now before executing the query, we have to write a group by clause, that is group by customer underscore id, customer underscore id. And there is one more additional condition which was given in the question, so that is only include customer who have at least 2 subscription, and for that we will add one having clause, that is having count of subscription underscore id greater than 2. So only if the customer is subscribing more than 2 times, we are considering that particular customer in the final result. So now I think there is one more condition, that is return the result ordered by longest gap between subscription. So we will have to write a order by clause also, that is order by, we will copy the column name, that is longest gap between subscription, copy, paste it here, which should be in descending order. Now execute and we should get the result which we initially saw. So we have customer ID, average amount paid, average subscription duration, and longest gap between subscription. And this was the exact same result which we initially saw as the expected output. Now this is one method of writing the query, or there were places we could have optimized the query a bit more, but I opted for this method because now it is pretty simple and it is very easy to understand within each CTE what we have done. So we have one CTE which is T1, and second CTE which is T2, and third query which we wrote based on the CTE T2. The schema to create the table will be provided in the description. You can copy the DDL and AML from the description. Hope you like this video. Thanks for watching and subscribe for more. Thank you.